Today I'm in conversation with Pieta Shakes, who is a mental health nurse. Hi, Pieta. Perhaps you
Hi.
could, hi, perhaps you could tell us a little bit about why being in this series is important to you.
Yeah, I think I learned about the series on Twitter and
Yeah,
um,
probably.
yeah, and I sat with it for a moment and then I really thought it was a really good opportunity just to, I don't know, break down some of those walls, I think, that we have this there's still something hidden and about and closed off about this lived experience when you're working in mental health. And I just thought it was a really good opportunity to try and, yeah, change that, make a change. Yeah. So, and I have a story. Lots of us have stories. So I thought, well,
We do. Yeah.
hmm.
And I thank you so much for coming on and sharing some of yours. Really welcome amongst kind of many of the contributors who've been sharing theirs too. It's going to be fantastic. So, where did you want to start?
Oh, wow. I guess I guess the part of the story that I'm coming today with is really sort of centered around my experience of having a child, and and how that probably wasn't necessarily the typical experience, if there is a typical experience, because when I was pregnant. And I was 32 weeks pregnant at the time. I learned from reading a report, actually, nobody told me. I learned that my daughter, her brain had developed differently. Um, and I didn't know what that meant at the time. So, as you can imagine, it's a bit of a whirlwind when you start to make all these future plans about your baby and what things are going to look like and how things are going to get, and you get up to that, you know, that stretch home, that long stretch home, and to hear that there's something. So, um, had to go through sort of lots of tests and procedures to try and find out what was actually going on. And it was just a really challenging time because at right through from 32 weeks to 36 weeks, we had this option and these decisions to be made that my daughter's life was probably not going to be the life that I had planned for her and that I had envisioned, and she may have some real struggles ahead. So I was offered a termination at that stage. Um, and I guess sitting with that decision making, I didn't sleep. I was having nightmares. I was really struggling to cope and um, to find some sort of grounding and some sort of right decision or what I would do at that time. And it was really, it really came down to what decision would I hate myself less for? And I was really struggling with that because most of my life I didn't want to have children. I was, I had moments of my own life that were pretty difficult, where I was pretty unhappy. As a teenager and going through university and dealing with my own struggles, and it's probably what drew me to mental health nursing, to be honest. And mental health nursing was probably what saved me in many ways. I learned a lot of I learned a lot of skills, and I met a lot of people that had skills and had this resilience and this thirst to still push through these amazing these things. So I met some amazing people, and anyway, so when I was pregnant and or I decided to have a child, hormones they do funny things to you, and then when this was sort of thrust upon me, and I was thinking about how she might suffer, I was sort of taken back to my suffering and thinking that if I was having a hard time growing up with a pretty typical brain, I've seen it on MRI. It's pretty typical. It might not, think the way that everybody else's does, but it looks pretty typical. But if I had these struggles, what was she going to face? And that was really hard. Um, So I ended up choosing to continue the pregnancy. As I said, it sort of got to what can I live with? And I've met some very, very marginalized people and supported very marginalized people. And society can be really, really horrible to some people, So this was all playing on it. It wasn't necessarily the condition or having a child with a difference. It was about what were they going to go through. And then having my baby, things were really well, but I still just had this sort of dark heaviness hanging over me, and I was, I don't know, I can't even thinking of the time now. It's really blurry. I think I lost a whole lot of her early moments because I was just so anxious about things. I was having intrusive thoughts. I wasn't sleeping. I couldn't sleep because if I put her down and I was just not sure if she was going to wake up. So I was constantly looking at her, making sure that, she was still breathing. I couldn't trust anyone with her. And I would have all these visions of all these really bad things that were going to happen. And some of them were nothing to do with her diagnosis. Just those really intrusive thoughts. And I know that can be quite common after having children. And we probably don't speak enough about that in general. But I think it was confounded by having this diagnosis and this unknown, because it wasn't until she was 2 weeks old that I was able to rule out a particular syndrome, which would have meant I would have buried her as a bub, or could have meant that I may have buried her as a bub. So having this diagnosis on top and this potential guilt that I had caused it, and just all of this stuff to work with, I tried to reach out for support, but I wasn't sure where to go. I was living in a sort of rural or regional area, I should say, and I was a mental health nurse, so I knew everyone in the public service. So I didn't want to contact them because, nobody wants to see like they're failing. I thought that I was failing as a mum, and I didn't want to look like that person that I should know this. I should know how to fix myself, because don't I fix other people? I've learned that no, we don't fix people. But, I felt that there would be stigma and shame attached to that. And how could I go back to that workplace and work there again after that? And especially when you work in that side and you sit down and you fill out the reports, and then you have files and charts and people have meetings about you. And oh God, it just felt really, it didn't feel nice. But then I did refer to a mother baby unit quite far away. But we were denied an admission based on my daughter's diagnosis because it was unknown, so there was risk attached to that. And it was funny walking those shoes, because it was just oh, sorry, you can't come here, bye. And you just think, oh God, these we just hang up on these people and they're just stranded. Like I didn't know where else to go. And I'm a mental health nurse. I knew the system. So I ended up connecting with my clinical supervisor who lived interstate, and we pretty much pleaded with her, and she sort of made the transition to therapist at that point in time, a one-way transition. So then I lost my clinical supervisor out of that. But yeah, over time, I think things kind of just settled. I'm not sure if I ever recovered from that. My daughter's now 8, and I still have these intrusive thoughts about things that might happen to her. And for a long time, that kept me out of thinking that I was ever going to return to mental health nursing. I didn't think I could. So I actually even didn't, register as a nurse for a while. I had a few years away and didn't even do my registration. I didn't think I was coming back. And then I started to get more involved in reading more research and things, and started to think, well, maybe there's a way to come back without being back in the role that felt so, it just didn't fit anymore. So I sort of headed down that path, and now here I am doing my PhD about the lived experience of receiving a diagnosis. And I'm working with these mums, or I'm interviewing mums and listening to their stories, and feel like I'm making something of it and giving back in a way, and wanting to share my experience, because congenital anomaly diagnosis and prenatal diagnosis, it's so quiet and hidden, and also stigmatized. I was told, I could choose a termination and we could tell everyone that it was a stillborn. And, just some of the language that comes through, there's a lot of shame embedded with this silence. And I think that needs to change. Well, clearly all about change tonight. So, yeah.
This is all about change. I am really struck by how and something that really resonates with me is that you kind of came away from a profession that just didn't fit anymore because of your lived experience. I've mentioned this before, kind of punching a hole through the way that we train, or something about how the profession is that means it's just like putting the wrong pair of shoes back on, that you can't, there's something that's not matching up, which is really unfortunate, and it shouldn't be that way. And then finding a way to, how your experience helped you navigate a new path, kind of from that pain, from that trauma, from that difficulty. It helped set you on a new path that had meaning, and also that you were somehow seemed to have reclaimed some of your other experiences too from your profession that seemed good to claim back. That you've made something new. I don't know how you see it. That's how I kind of saw it when you were talking about it, and certainly makes me think about my experience too, in that I'm in a moment of reclaiming right now, and that's more personally, but I don't know how that will play out more professionally.
When you said that sort of word, reclaiming, I was just thinking that's what it is. Or as you said, coming back into the profession and reclaiming the parts that, there's a lot of good in there, and I loved a lot of what we did, but there was also a lot that just didn't fit anymore. And especially as I've continued to, I guess, parent as well in this different world that we seemingly live in, and parenting a neurodivergent child, and also parenting with my experiences and what I need to do to get through the days is going to be different than another person. And I think that insight from actually living those moments, it's really powerful, because there are roles that, it could potentially go into, but I actually, my lived experience has given me an insight that our books only show us so much, and yes. A lot of it was built on theories that, if you actually look at the research, some of it was pretty dodgy anyway. But the things have just stuck through time and haven't shifted, and systems have these closed doors and these ways of being that just, don't mesh anymore with me. But there's still some amazing things in there, and there's still some good potential and some possibilities and some people that are really there that wanting to make change in systems and ways and how we go about things. So reclaiming those bits.
Reclaiming those bits, and just I don't know what you think about this, and I don't know if I've even got the right words. In fact, I'm fairly sure I haven't, because I'm thinking off the cuff. But there's I'm quite a visual person, and there's something about I used the term punching through before, something about this lived experience that you break through something, not only personally, but you break through something in the profession to a space that should have more freedom, or you get a sight of what or how things can look better or different, from a stuckness that perhaps can be felt both personally when you're going through your stuff, but that you can see a stuckness in the system as well, in the ways that it doesn't flex and that it isn't open. and it's unhelpful. So it seems like, for I'm not overly happy with the word insight, but I can't think of another word right now. But it seems like there's a sense of insight or a seeing, or a clarity of vision, that going through your own stuff, and also being, say, in touch with the system in any ways that people can be, or even working in the system, that clarity of sight then sweeps through the whole thing, that there is something that is very valuable that can be offered back to open things up, if only people would listen, if only they would see that.
Yeah, I do agree, and not just, I guess, with the system, but other people as well. I think people with lived experience connect with people with lived experience on a particular level as well.
Yeah.
On that, I think you said the word before, on that ally level, don't they? Yeah.
It's really, goodness me, it's potent stuff, isn't it? You couldn't even try and put this stuff in a bottle, but it would be good if you could. It's very powerful. I don't know if there's anything more that you want to say about any parts of your journey, or any parts of being a mental health professional and having that journey, as opposed to somebody in a different job.
Yeah, I guess it's hard for me to speak of being in a different job and having that journey, because I am a mental health professional, and that's my lived experience. And I guess that's the other thing, isn't it? You learn that talking from your space is something, but you can't talk from other people's spaces and from other people's angles, because you learn that some of the assumptions that we've made about people at particular times of need weren't quite correct. I don't know if that makes any sense, or if I'm getting my words out now, but I think yeah. So I wouldn't, yeah. I guess from being a mental health nurse and going through things, it's really just, I guess, being surprised that if I knew, like, some of the things that we do to help people through distress, and I knew how to access services and the services that were around, and I knew all those things and I still struggled, it makes me think about the people that don't have that awareness of the systems and things as well.
Absolutely.
And how much harder their journey must also, well, we're not comparing, but, potentially, yeah. And I did have some notes, but I think we've diverted from that. But yeah, so
we have we did make some, didn't we? And it's and I think we've everything, all the themes that you wanted to cover have been covered, and then we springboarded into more, which I think has been really brilliant and very valuable. And I was just thinking then, of course, it's nighttime where you are, and over here in London, it's in the day, and it was just making me think about how lovely it is to connect between here and Australia, and how great it's been to connect in other parts of the series. Hi, Kat. So welcome. And how great it's been to connect kind of in other parts of the series with people in the States as well. And that this is something beautifully global, and its difficulties that are shared globally as well. And I think we can only profit from just keeping a global network open, hearing each other across the oceans, and making that sense of aloneness feel even less present. So I thank you for that. I thank you for connecting.
I thank you for the opportunity, and I thank you for what you're doing by bringing all these people together who are sharing their stories. And I can only imagine that if I was back in that moment and the lived experience was viewed with a different angle, that it wouldn't have been so hard to seek support. I would have been able to go to my colleagues. I would have been able to feel acceptance and feel like it's okay. And you know, that's not to say there's anything bad about them in particular, but it was just this thing that I carried from seeing how these systems operate. And but if we can move to somewhere where it's you know, where it's okay, where lived experience is valued, is understood, is accepted, is a part of being, then yeah, I can imagine that a lot of those barriers will be reduced, and a lot of that isolation that people experience will be reduced. And absolutely, we can be good, you know, mental health professionals and bring something to the profession in whatever capacity that's okay with us, even with our lived experience. And the cat's hanging on to me.
Oh. Yes. Thank you so much for everything that you've shared, and for being a very important part of the many voices that need to be raised on this.
I really look forward to hearing the other voices when the time comes. Yeah,
it's going to be fantastic to put everything together. Thank you so much, Pieta.
That's okay. Thank you. And Frog. Thank you, Frog.
Thank you, Frog.